I'd never been unsteady on my legs before that moment. My slimy colleague didn't have legs of his own. For that matter, he didn't have a permanently solid form at all. He could solidify part of himself for short periods, and on this occasion when it departed the hovercraft, as soon as the hardened exterior was rendered gelatinous again, it was jiggling like it had just sat through a quake. I wobbled a little, and to my surprise, the small human female immediately was by my side and put her hand on my arm. Her soft skin squeezed as delicately as a Fadian's feather fall, and she gave me that smile expression again, though a little smaller, and asked me, "Are you all right? I'm sorry. I didn't think to ask how any of you could handle speed." An apology is a very strange custom humans engage in. It is an expression of regret for some offense or inflicted feeling. Curiously, as I would later learn, they have a non-apology that is disguised as an apology. I know this may sound strange, but if a human tells me, "I'm sorry if you feel," or "I'm sorry, but," or "I'm sorry you," perhaps you see a pattern here. All of these three forms either include a negation but, or they make the apology a reference to the other person's perceptions. It turns out that true apologies are focused only on the one who actually did the thing being apologized for. "I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I was late. I'm sorry for not thinking of you." All true apologies among humans include the speaker taking responsibility for themselves and their actions. All false apologies reference some facet of the other person's status without accountability for their part in it. This subtlety would quickly become important as I moved through human society after I met my host family. But in that moment, I just found her touch pleasant. I didn't realize how warm human bodies could be. "I'm fine, thank you, please don't worry about it." I knew what to say from those videos, and she responded immediately with a broader smile. My professor's tongue darted out and licked his eyeball only once, and I knew I had handled myself well. "Please, let me introduce you to some of my friends and get you all a drink. It's on me. It's the least I can do," she said and pulled out a little plastic card. Or rather, on the fleet's good relations account. She winked, a gesture I knew to indicate either playfulness or deception, and unsure of which I was being subjected to, I elected to nod silently. "Come on," she said, and approached the double doors. They slid into the wall, and I was immediately struck by the noise of voices similar to hers, higher pitch and deeper pitch. I generally thought humans were cleanly divided between obvious male and obvious female, but this proved that textbooks do not cover everything. It gave us the far ends, but not the spectrum. Some humans seemed to be almost as genderless as my fluidic companion. I couldn't tell one from another, and some of them played this up. The room itself was enormous. Our own species all used small spaces with few figures, if any. But this was vast. Easily a few hundred of my paces in either direction, filled with tables and something I recognized from films as bars. My colleagues, fellow students I suppose, were mute, but I said immediately, "Lead on." She took well to that, and her feet made a small skipping stride. Strangely, she didn't keep her back to us, but showed her back to the others of her species, and began to chat with us, as if she'd known us for a lifetime. "So we have a lot of things here, but based on the data your ship transmitted, bourbon and beer are both viable for all of you, and you can place your cargo order on the screen so you can drink and work at the same time." "Is drinking important?" my fluidic semi-permeable fellow student asked in his bubbling voice that approximated human vocal sounds. "Yes, very. In one of our ancient empires, Persia, I think." She paused and looked away as she searched her memory. "Yes, that was it. Whenever they had a disagreement, they would first argue sober, then get drunk and argue the same thing again. They wouldn't accept an argument unless it made sense in both states. Alcohol plays an important role in social behavior for our race. It lowers our inhibitions, makes us more truthful, and for most of us, it makes us more open to friendship." She frowned a little. "I admit, some people it turns into real jerks, but as long as you avoid those, it's fine." By the time she said that, her back smacked into a golden tube that ran along the edge of the bar, behind which a towering wall of human meat stood. Unlike most of his race, he had a bald head up top, and he was slightly over the normal weight that I saw from the others. But he did have sharp-looking eyes, like a hunter. "Hey, Mark, a round of bourbons for my new friends and I." Friends? I wondered about that. I knew humans could bond quickly, and I understood the meaning of this friend term, but I didn't expect it this fast. The human she called Mark spun around, tipped a few clear bottles holding a dark amber liquid into a few transparent glasses, and then slid them up to each of us as we stood on either side of the human. "A toast," she said, and raised up her glass before we could drink. "This is liquid? Is not toast bread that you have cooked twice?" the burbling voice of my colleague asked, and both Mark and our new human laughed. "He's funny. I'm Lisa, by the way. And no, well, yes, but also not because it's something we do before we drink. It's where we make a wish for something good. You're travelers like us, so we have this tradition on our ship. When we encounter travelers, we raise a glass and toast, that is, we wish for safe travels for those we meet. So, a toast to safe travels." Lisa gave us that same broad smile again, and then slammed back her drink and smacked her lips before sliding her card across the bar. "Keep 'em coming, Mark. We have to show them how humans do it." Fortunately, we'd cleared ourselves to consume almost every human beverage beforehand, but that didn't really prepare me for actually doing so. I held the little glass in between two fingers after making our toast, and looked at the amber-colored liquid, studying it with my naked eyes. It seemed innocuous. I brought it to my nose and took a sniff while surreptitiously eyeing my colleagues. My professor was already downing his and reaching for another, but the rest of us had our doubts. The smell was something else. A sharp bite to the nose would have been more subtle. Maybe if I weren't such a coward, I might have gone first, or maybe I wouldn't have gone at all, but I felt the expectant eyes of Lisa and Mark on me, waiting for me to try it. My fellow students were no different, and it was our gelatinous colleague who went first, an appendage emerging and sticking into the little glass. He soaked it up like a sponge. One by one we went, with me being the last. I tilted my head back and threw the liquid down my throat in one clean motion. I gasped, panted, bent forward and coughed while slapping my hand on the surface of the bar. The shot hit me, like I'd been shot. There was a deep burning sensation in my gut, and I felt Lisa's hand on my back. "You okay there, buddy?" she asked, but Mark only slid another row of glasses out toward us with a little smile on his face. He saw something Lisa had not. When the burning was still going, there was a sense of warmth coursing through me. Perhaps it's because I have multiple hearts to the human's one. But my blood pumped faster than theirs, and as a result the liquid toxin raced through me at a much higher speed. I felt that relaxed sensation coming over me. Mark, a dark-haired human in a fairly tight-fitting silver shirt with a black vest, wore a mirthful face. "He's fine. He likes it." His voice was buttery smooth the way he said it, or it seemed so to me. Lisa, realizing that Mark was right when I reached for the next glass, didn't stop patting my back, but it slowed down and became more congratulatory. "I guess you're right, Mark," she said, and then leaned her back against the bar to look out over the sea of faces. "So, what made you want to study humans?" she asked me, and I imitated her gesture while my fellow students drifted off into their own experiences, and I joined Lisa in people watching. "That's what your ship is here for, isn't it? To take you to study us." I must have looked surprised to her because she laughed at my silent expression and said, "We don't take a lot of aliens to Earth. Word gets around." She explained. "I figured it would help me get rich, famous, and it would let me work alone. Not many of us are studying humans, and I am kind of curious. You're a strange species," I said and threw back another shot. "Yeah, I guess we kind of are," Lisa replied. "But that's it? Curiosity, money, and fame? You sure you're not a human in a dog suit?" I threw back another shot while she laughed at her own joke and matched my shot with one of her own. That was how I learned about two more things. First, human competitiveness. Shot by shot. Until my semi-permeable friend was a puddle, my professor's tongue was dangling over the bar, and I found myself embarrassingly passing out curled around her feet. And also, the absurd human tolerance for alcohol. I didn't learn until well after my first hangover passed that the human liver actually had a special part of itself, which only existed to process alcohol. I had great fun, I think, from what I remember, but that takes us to the next step in a long journey. Before I continue, I should add that this was not my last experience with Homo sapiens and alcohol. It was my first, and my most painful, at least with the aftermath. But those other times lie ahead, assuming you read on in this humble manuscript. For now, it is enough to know that I woke up with a splitting headache, my professor slurring his words with a limp tongue, the chitin half shed from half again too many drinks. I didn't think it was possible, but yes. He got so drunk he molted halfway and passed out, while our slimy colleague took another half-day to rise beyond a puddle of his former self, and he was utterly unable to speak until that evening. But we did wake up in a single room, each of us with a small wicker basket and a bottle of that wonderful stuff, along with a friendly note from a friend I would never see again. Lisa wrote a little scrawl that took hours to translate. To this day, I think she was drunk when she wrote it, but it read, "To toast to safe travels with the next people you meet who have a long way to go before they get to where they're going. All the best, Lisa." My mouth didn't really let me smile, but the warmth of her well wishes reached me somehow, as did the memory of that first human touch. That kind of openness and welcome isn't found anywhere else that I have ever seen, not before and not since, at least not away from humans. Of course, today, I know that she was somewhat exceptional, even for her kind. Not everybody is like that, but it was genuine, and it was far from rare. To understand the importance, the significance of this, I need to point something else out. Human diplomacy is second to none. They are, most of them, uniquely attuned to searching out the needs of others, their fears, their hopes, and presenting themselves as the ones who can meet or dash them. Human diplomacy has become the bridge across which species have moved to make peace. Understanding others is the thing they are arguably the best at. Being a uniquely social species has set them up as the arbiters of choice for multiple races, and in that ordinary human, I understood why. Because the good ones, they really care. Even a stranger can matter to them if they're needed, even if they'll never see that one again once they've given help. It's a very strange thing, but it helped me believe my teacher when he talked about the self-termination run that the humans launched just to rescue one outpost full of civilians. I never did see Lisa after that. The cargo was loaded onto our ship, and we were being escorted by the vessel we'd so recently traveled upon. The endless stars in the void still terrified so many that, quite frankly speaking, most races had very few who were willing to traverse the stars, and remote ships were the norm. But humans seemed to embrace it like they were born there. Some said they were, that their race evolved on Earth from material that first formed in space, or on their planet Mars, that was shot to Earth by an impact from orbit. Nobody knows for sure, but the result, whatever the truth, people who play music in the unbounded dark, go singing to their deaths, are now among the most common travelers in the Great Void. And when the alarm rang announcing pirates a few days after we departed, all of us learned firsthand the reason why nobody in their right mind, what was the word? Humps with humans. No, they have another term. Why nobody fucks with humankind. "Zenti! Zenti!" the loudspeaker called out, and the sea sentient living beings became a tidal wave of mindless terror. I was no different. I'm an academic, even coming from a rare intelligent predator race. I've never been particularly brave. So when the announcement hit and the alarm began, its blaring noise stung my ears. I went down on all fours, locked my limbs, and ran. Fear is a strange thing. Most races that develop intelligence develop a fear sense. They avoid danger like it is a disease, and the most common response to a threat is not to fight it, but to flee from it. By the same token, almost all intelligent races develop a way to alert others around them to the danger. In all my life, I'd never been sprayed with so many different foul chemicals, odors, or liquids, nor were my ears ever assaulted by so many different keening noises as we all rushed for the promise of safety in our own quarters. Those who could walk on walls or ceilings rushed there to avoid the press, only to trample each other and knock them down to fall on our heads down below. Tangled in a sea of limbs, tentacles, mushy flesh, and howling fear, we were no longer intelligent or civilized. We were the basest of animals, all of us, thinking only of ourselves and our lives as we scrambled to push our way free of the press. The ship rattled when our hull was struck. Our shields were light, meant to fend off small space debris, not Zenti torpedoes. The rumble was like the thunder of clouds, and the torpedoes flashed past the portholes like lightning through the dark of night. Trapped in our endless void, the ululations of passengers and crew were a nightmarish few minutes that seemed to stretch out for an entire lifetime. Even today, I look back on those minutes as the worst in my life. Fortunately, as a predator race, even as a coward, I am stronger than most of those around me, and I forced myself through, using the curved nails to dig into some unfortunate flesh ahead of me and rip myself free with a violent pull and take me out of the fallen heap. I rushed to my room with no thought to any life but my own, slammed the emergency button down, and thrust my face against the porthole to watch the Zenti ship undertake its slow, wide banking maneuver. My breath fogged up the window, obscuring them from my view until I wiped the pane clear again and waited for the end. The quarters of passengers and crew are referred to as scatterboxes in common languages. Each room contained a small communication device, some rations, and a miniature propulsion device suitable to help us dock, but barely anything more. They were often referred to as space caskets, since unless someone was found quickly, they would die inside those in a matter of days and just float through the void until their body was recovered or their pod burned up when it was brought down into the atmosphere by another planet's gravity. A few space caskets have been found in orbit around small moons over the years, the bodies perfectly preserved for a rescue that came too late. But even with the low likelihood of rescue, we all still used them. Any hope, however faint, was better than none. And Zenti pirates only wanted rich hostages. Their banking maneuver would put them in line with our engines. The wide-winged engines of their ships were almost bird-like. They might even have been called graceful in another context. But to me, they were only ominous. Outside my locked door, I could hear the shouting and screaming of the other passengers as they rushed in. I hadn't ejected my scatterbox yet. I knew enough about the Zenti to know that the bored crews of other ships would take potshots at us, and I didn't want to be target practice. Others, though, their fear was even worse than mine, and they must have hit their eject buttons immediately after their doors sealed. 100 tiny ships blew clear of the mother vessel and drifted away. I could see as they tumbled free, a few terrified aliens looking out, right before the Zenti light guns sprayed their little explosive rounds out into space and destroyed the life-saving capsules with the passengers inside. Nobody really thought the Zenti would be here, and that just made all of this worse. The Zenti had shut down a lot of their military in the post-war era, but a handful of them simply took their ships and ran, becoming raiders, minor warlords, and pirates wherever patrols were few. But most didn't last. Or if they did, it was because they went into hiding. I guess our vessel looked too tempting. Not surprising. Education vessels were filled with elites that could be captured and traded for ample goods and resources. Perhaps that was why they attacked, even knowing they were in human territory. I heard a comm beep at my door. It rang several times and I shouted the unlock order. I don't know why, but at that moment all I knew was whatever was coming in was at least not likely to be a threat, and anything non-threatening was welcome. To my shock, it was my professor and some of the other students. Not all. Their absence told me plenty, and if I had doubts about that meaning, the way my professor looked past me toward my porthole told me to set those doubts aside. "We are in human space. Just wait," he said, and pointed to the window to the void where a fleet of 12 ships came into view. They were green with wide wings on which a row of cannons sat. Their pulsing rays battered our shields, and the ship shook like mad. And it was only my teacher's preternatural calm that allowed me to keep from voiding my bowels and hiding in fear. "They gave us drink. They gave us food and supplies. They promised us safety. We will be fine," he said to reassure those who had their doubts. Me, I wondered if Lisa was going to be on the ship he anticipated coming to our aid, and that, in and of itself, was surprising. Why did I think of her? I've never thought of anyone else of any species so quickly before. These people, they are infectious. And over the telecom device came something my professor promised would come in human space. Music. I didn't know what it was called at the time, but now I know its name. Ride of the Valkyries. And human voices came through every channel. I rushed to the window as fast as my wobbly legs, and substantial hangover would permit, and pressed my eyes to the window again to see for myself. Nobody rushed into a fight like this. Not even my homeworld. The human ship emerged from the purple gas cloud where it lay in wait, and though it was one alone, it began to fire from its many cannons, and explosions rocked the space around the Zenti pirates. A Broadcom communication hit the common airwaves used for everyday communications. "Not to worry. Just carry on your voyage. We'll handle these, and safe travels." I recognized the voice of the dark-furred human, forceful and, as I would later understand, proud. Humans had something curious about them, a work ethic not often found outside of artisans. They take pride in the things they deem their purpose, their profession. Whether they are a janitor or an admiral, they proclaim excellence in their chosen craft as one of the highest virtues. And for their admiralty, that apparently included courage. The human ship was a lean thing, long and arrow-shaped, and as it came closer, I could see from its sleek surface many small guns and launchers emerging. Strangely enough, the human design for combat ships seems to have mirrored those of my people, which is to say, one too many. This single human vessel used large numbers of smaller guns that targeted the Zenti torpedoes and detonated them well before impact, while others targeted the individual Zenti ships. Whether by intent or accident, I do not know, but the humans never disabled their Broadcom transmissions, and I realized something as I listened to the humans in the void, barking out their orders and announcing their triumphs along the way. To them, this was a game. I watched the fight between the human ship and the pirates as they broke off to engage the authorities, and watched as one by one the raiders were set to listing, their ships burning in space, each one disabled, broken, or shattered into a million tiny pieces so small that it was like they never existed at all. Before long, they were out of view, and I couldn't see it anymore. When they left to chase the remainder of the pirates and our passenger vessel began to scoop up the surviving scatterboxes, my professor spoke. Humans are a rare type of predator, an active hunter species. Those almost never develop civilizations. The others are all sedentary, almost to the last inhabited world. But theirs? The humans evolved to run their prey to death, or walk them to death. They are the only known species in the galaxy that can run all day and night. The known record for a human was one who ran for more than 3 days and nights without stopping before he collapsed. My professor said it like he was telling me the time, and I got a sense of just how dangerous this race could be if they were provoked. It seemed so odd to think of Lisa and Mike then. They seemed so friendly and so non-threatening without even claws or sharp teeth to speak of. But the heedless courage of that single ship that could take on a dozen without fear and win. I felt a tingle in my spine that it seems was common among humans too, when I found something to fear.